welcome back to Lexi's Leukemia Warriors channel. I'm Jenna Garner, and this is my daughter Lexi Garner, and she is so excited because what are we going to show them how to make today, Lexi?
Cinnamon rolls.
That's right, cinnamon rolls. Alright, so today we're going to be making cinnamon rolls.
It's my favorite food.
It's one of Lexi's favorites. I used to buy them out of the can thinking she would like them, but I thought, you know what, I can do better. I can make these and she would probably eat them better. And sure enough, as soon as I made a homemade fresh batch, she ate them up. I will include the recipe in the links and the description down below. The recipe I use is actually a copycat recipe to make it taste like Cinnabon. There's a lady out there who blogs and does a lot of copycat recipes, so I usually try to seek her out and I might tweak it a little bit. We are making the large batch today. This is the original batch the recipe calls for, but I have two. I have the original and then I have everything written down if I want to have it, but we plan to make a bunch of these and freeze them. Lexi has to go to, as we call it, the big hospital tomorrow, and so we needed a quick breakfast that we can take on the road because we have to get there early due to all the checkpoints and everything before we can get in because everyone's...
When we get the oncology.
That's right. So when we get to the oncology clinic, what she hasn't eaten in the car, she wants to finish eating. So we are going to suit up in our masks tomorrow and go to the big hospital. All right, so let's get started. So I've already got some stuff kind of waiting in the wings here, ready to go to make this a little bit easier. So the first thing is your ingredients. You need 1 cup of warm milk, and this recipe calls for instant dry yeast. You could also use regular yeast instead of like the fast acting or the rapid rise is what Fleshman's has. But if you do that, it's going to take longer because you are going to let this rise a little bit. But the recipe calls for the fast acting. Don't ask me why, but it works. So what I did was I warmed up the milk just like you were going to warm up water to activate your yeast, and that's 1 cup of milk. And then that's the yeast in there, and I stirred it just a tiny bit, and then I've been letting it just sit there and proof. So I'm going to dump that into the bowl of our mixer, and Lexi's going to get ready and help me here soon. The other ingredients that you need are 2 eggs, room temp. I've been letting them sit out all morning. You also need 1/3 cup of melted butter, and I'm using salted butter. Just we tend to have salty palates here, and my husband swears he can tell when I use unsalted butter. So because of that, instead of using a full teaspoon of salt as the recipe calls for, I maybe use like a 3/4 teaspoon of salt because salted butter does add a little bit of salt and I don't want to go overboard. But if you're using unsalted butter, just use the full teaspoon. You also need 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, and then you need 4.5 cups of flour. Alright, so that's all the ingredients. So I've already poured the milk yeast mixture into my bowl. Basically, all you have to do at this point is add your eggs, 2 eggs, the butter, the salt, and the sugar. So basically,
This is the big soda.
yes. There's our butter. And the butter's still warm, but not super hot. I melted it ahead because you don't want to like seize up your eggs and cook them. There's your salt.
And this is the other salt?
This is the half a cup of sugar.
Oh.
See? Sugar and salt look similar, don't they? All right.
That's a flour.
I'm gonna kind of put all this together and don't have a mess. And all you're gonna do is mix that all together, and I'm gonna let Lexi help me. Okay. You ready to help me, Lexi?
Mmm.
So you're gonna take this whisk.
Yeah, this is my mix.
That is your whisk. And let's roll your sleeves up so we
Yeah.
don't get so messy.
Yeah, so don't get over my clothes.
All right. Do you want me to break the eggs up for you and then you stir? So I'm gonna kind of break the eggs up,
Yeah.
and you kind of want this mixture to be a little bit mixed together. Go ahead. Before you add in the flour. You could use like your paddle attachment or the whisk attachment, I think. But honestly, I didn't want to dirty up any more attachments, and she really likes to help. Don't lick it. That's raw eggs. Yucky. So just stir it together. All right. So let's see. It looks like she's got everything. You just kind of want to combine it a little bit so it's all one mixture. And then what I use for this is my dough hook attachment.
And
It just makes things easier.
How about
So we're gonna put the dough hook attachment on, and then Lexi, you are gonna help me add the flour bit by bit. And this is just 1/3 of a cup scoop. You're gonna need all 4.5 cups of flour, but if you add it all at once, your mixer can't handle that. So let's scoot you over here, Lexi. All right. So you are gonna scoop up one of these. Okay, scoop. And then you're gonna take it and put it in there. All right, do one more. I usually do a couple of scoops at a time and then just add as I need to. There you go. Okay. All right, that's good for now. So now we're gonna put this down, and I'm gonna leave it on the low setting. And basically it's going to mix. So we are just going to continue adding all of the flour, and every time I add the flour, I'll turn the mixer off until this has formed a nice dough. All right.
like that?
Go ahead.
Baba.
Add another one.
This one.
Be careful.
It is a ice.
Right, but we don't want to go over the side.
Okay. That is bad.
Keep going. So we finished mixing the dough with our dough hook. The dough hook is great to knead it. Once we added in the rest of our flour, we let it knead for 5 to 7 minutes. So the dough is going to be heavy and it's going to be tacky, but not super sticky. So if your dough is still like super sticky, then that means it needs to knead a little bit more, because when you touch it, it shouldn't like, it should maybe stick to your finger a tiny bit, but there shouldn't be like clumps on it. So once you've got it, and this is a heavy dough. Touch this, Lexi. You want to hold it? Is it heavy? You're strong, aren't you? So this is a heavy dough, and we're gonna let this rise until it's double in size. So that's why the recipe says double in size, because it depends on if you use the fast-acting yeast or if you use regular yeast. So I have here a big bowl that has been coated with non-stick baking spray, and we are going to stick this in here, and then I've got a damp paper towel to cover over the top. Well, you're going to put this in the bowl for me. You could also use a damp dish towel if you had it, just something so that the dough won't stick to the top. Okay. And you're going to kind of, we're going to roll this around a bit, right? Because we want the dough, there we go, to be completely coated with the cooking spray. So you want to help me lay this over here? All right, gentle. Don't want to break it. There we go. All right, so I have already preheated my oven to 375. That is what this is going to bake at, is 375 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to actually leave this on top of the oven, like, so that the heat will help it rise. And we will get started on the filling while the dough is rising. All right, so we have the ingredients ready for the filling, and actually the filling is really super easy. So what I have here is a 2-cup measuring cup that's got a little pour thing on it. I just think it's easier to mix up everything in here, and then I can kind of pour and spread it later. So this recipe doesn't actually call for you to brush the melted butter over and then sprinkle on like a cinnamon and sugar mixture like all the others do. Actually, you just mix everything up in this bowl, this here, and then we spread it on like a paste later. So the first thing I have in here is 1 stick of butter, so half a cup of butter, and I just kind of stuck it in the microwave for a tiny bit. I didn't want it all the way melted. I still wanted it to have a little bit of form. Room temp is fine, but mine still hadn't softened up enough, so I had to use the microwave a little bit. Okay? The next thing we're going to do is we are going to add in, bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah. We are going to add in 1 cup of packed brown sugar. And I use dark brown. I don't really care for light brown, and that's what the recipe calls for. So, Lexi, you're going to help. Can you use your spatula? Oh, a little bit at a time, okay? Good job. All right. That's all right. And then last but not least
Is
the cinnamon.
yes, cinnamon.
Here, let's scrape the last little bit of cinnamon out of there. Okay. Now I'm going to get it started because I don't want this to go everywhere. But once we get it going, she can stir it the rest of the way. And this is basically going to form a paste. It should be kind of like a thick but runny paste. And if for whatever reason it's still a little not soft enough, you can always put this whole mixture in the microwave and nuke it a little bit until it's softer and more what you need. Because the softer it is, the easier it will spread and it will go farther. Because if it's not soft enough, then you'll end up with clumps and it won't cover very evenly. All right, Lexi, you ready to start? Go ahead. I'll hold it for you.
So hard.
It is kind of hard. Gonna give your muscles and your arms a workout, isn't it? Good job. That's the other thing about baking with Lexi. Not only do we work on our counting skills and our math skills, but it also gives her a chance to get an arm workout. Because on the days when she's not feeling well and she'd rather lay around, you know, you're not getting much exercise, so it helps her keep her strength up. All right, y'all done? And that actually looks pretty good. And then what I normally do is I will set it also on the stove by where the dough is rising. and that will help to keep it soft. And then we have this ready to go for whenever it's time to roll out the dough. All right, so the filling mixture is over next to the dough on the hot stove, so it will stay nice and soft while the dough rises. And now we're going to work on the frosting.
Yeah.
So there's lots of stuff you can do while the dough is rising to go ahead and be ready for when they come out of the oven. And the frosting is super delicious and your favorite part, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lexi loves the frosting. Frosting is super, super simple.
Yeah.
So the first thing,
like filling.
yeah, first thing I've got is 6 ounces of cream cheese, so it's not quite a whole brick. And this has been sitting out at room temperature so that it's nice and soft. And then once again, another stick of butter, not totally melted, just softened. Room temperature is best. I had to use the microwave because mine wasn't quite that soft. So the first thing you're going to do is combine those two items together.
And about powdered sugar.
And then we're going to add the powdered sugar in a little bit. So you're going to kind of combine the cream cheese and the butter mixture.
All together.
Yes, and then while this is mixing, do you want to add in the vanilla?
Yeah.
This is half a tablespoon of vanilla. This makes a lot of frosting. But you're going to have a lot. It does smell good. But you're going to have a lot of cinnamon rolls, and we like ours covered in frosting. You could always have this frosting if you're not a big fan or you have some people that don't want frosted ones, and it would be plenty. All right, so you want to dump it in there? Yep, go ahead. Good job. So that's our vanilla. Now once we've got it starting to kind of emulsify and combine, as you can see, it's all mixed together. We're going to take the same scoop from before, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to start adding the powdered sugar bit by bit, okay? So you're going to dump, yep.
The powder and sugar.
That's right. That's all right. So you're going to dump a couple of scoops in there, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Here.
More.
Yeah. There we go. And I'm going to turn this back on low. That's all right. Go ahead and scoop back your next one. And we are just going to keep adding sugar until the sugar is all gone and the frosting is smooth and creamy. All right, so we added in the last of our powdered sugar and let this mix for a couple minutes. And now we have a super creamy, you want some? Go ahead. Lexi loves frosting. We don't tend to let her have tons of sweets, but when I am cooking, I do make a little exception. As long as there's no raw egg or something like that, she can totally have a taste. So. Alright, so I did have to scrape down the bowl a couple of times as this mixed, just to make sure we got everything. And as you can see, it has turned into a nice creamy, fluffy frosting. That's kind of what you want. You want it to be fluffy. And for me, what I do is I frost them when they come right out of the oven. So it kind of, I'll put a little bit on so it kind of melts into that nook and cranny, because this makes lots of frosting. And then if you want, you can leave it like that, or you can go back over after they've cooled a little bit and spread an actual layer on so you can see the frosting. Either way is delicious. So now we just have to let our dough finish rising, and then we will roll it out and make our cinnamon rolls. All right, and we're back. I have my dough. It's risen. and it's taking up this entire bowl now. And so it's been an hour, hour and a half maybe that I let it rise. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to take a little bit of flour and place it down on this mat. I love this mat. I found it at Walmart. It gives you all the sizes for if you need to roll out pie dough, but it also has markings for your cinnamon rolls. So if you know what size you need to roll it out to, you can just measure. And for me, I know that my dough needs to be 24 by 15 because I made the bigger batch this time. So that's going to take up pretty much most of this mat. And I had to put little bowls down on the corners because I roll it up when I store it. And so to get it to lay flat again, you have to have something covering. So I am going to use my rolling pin, and then I'm literally just going to dump this right out in the center, and then sprinkle a little more flour over the top, and then I'm going to kind of press this down. And the first thing I'm going to do actually is kind of form this into a shape of a rectangle so that when I'm rolling it out, I can just keep rolling and it will be that rectangle shape. So I kind of do that with my hands. I spread it out a little bit, and then once I've got it, then I start forming up the edges of my rectangle. Try to get it as squared off as I can. And then here we go. So I'm literally just going to roll this out until it is almost as big as this mat here. And as you get going, you can take the weights off the corners because the dough holds it in place for you. All right, so I have my dough pretty much rolled out. It's kind of an oval-ish rectangle, so that's close enough. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to take my mixture that we made earlier, the filling, and we are gonna pour this and spread this over the top with the spatula. So you just kind of pour it, a little dribbles all over to the edge, and then some in the center. And then you're just going to take your spatula and spread this all around, letting it sit on the stove. The hot stove helped it liquefy a little bit, so it's super spreadable and not super thick and pasty. And it seems like a lot, but you really do want to spread it all the way to the edge. So once you start spreading it out, you'll begin to see that it's actually not as much as what you thought. Alright, so I've got everything, as you can see, spread out as much as I can. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start with the long side, and I am going to roll this up and try to keep it as even as possible when I roll. So you kind of start at one end and start rolling, and then just keep going back up. And then it kind of just starts rolling in on itself. And then once you have it rolled, I stick the seam side down. It makes it easier to cut that way. Now, I have one of these bench scrapers, and that's what I normally use to cut my cinnamon rolls. And I will actually go to the edge here because I want to try to make them all the same size. So I'll usually do a couple of inches, knowing full well that the end pieces aren't going to be that great because they never are, right? And depending upon which size dough you made, so which, did you do the full recipe or did you have it? You should be able to get, depending upon how you roll it out, for the full recipe, you should be able to get at least a dozen cinnamon rolls. It kind of depends on the day, for me, how hard I worked to roll it out, how thick it was or not. And sometimes it starts to get a little flattened out, and I'll just kind of squeeze it back up as I'm doing it. You could also, if you don't have a bench scraper, just use a knife. But I find the bench scraper is just easier, because I can just hold it on the top and go straight down instead of having to kind of slice. Alright, almost done here. Okay, so here's my cinnamon rolls. See how many I ended up with. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Perfect. Right on the money today. So, the next thing you're going to do is add your cinnamon rolls to your pans. I use, well, I don't always, but I use these little square glass ones. You could use totally a 9x13, and normally I would have like a disposable metal 9x13. So that way, when I'm done, it can just go away. But with everything being so scarce right now because of everything going on with quarantine, I'm just making do with what I have because I used my other 9x13 pan to make something else. So, what I'm going to do is I am actually going to just pick these up, and then where they got smooshed down a tiny bit from where you like cut them, you're just gonna stick them in your pan, and then we're gonna let them rise in the pan. So I'm just kind of reforming them back into their circle that they were, and then once I get them all in there, I can kind of rearrange them and see how I want them to be in here. And you don't want to put all the end pieces in one pan per se, because you don't want a pan full of end pieces. Because you want things to rise evenly. So there's 6 in that one. I may rearrange these as time goes on. So then I'm going to put 6 in this one. And honestly, I think I'm going to swap a couple of these out because this glass one just doesn't have the same space that the metal one does. So I'm going to put those small ones in there, like that. Okay. So then I'll stick this one in the center. So basically now I am going to cover these with a damp paper towel, and I'm going to sit them on the hot stove again so that they can rise for about 20 minutes. You want them to double in size basically, so you have to let them rise for just a little bit. And while these are rising, I am going to warm up a touch of heavy cream. It does call for a lot of heavy cream in the recipe, like half a cup, but honestly, I feel like that's a little too much because you just kind of want to fill in the nooks and crannies. So you can do a half cup if you want, but I wouldn't use all of it. All right, so we're back, and I have let the cinnamon rolls rise just a bit, and I have not quite a half a cup of heavy cream in here because I don't think we're going to need that much, and I warmed it up just a tiny bit to take the chill off of it, but it's not super scalding hot. So I'm going to just make sure that I got these where I want them, and I am just going to pour a little bit of cream over the tops and let it soak into each one. You can let it dribble down the sides. You can even like brush it. But I don't use very much. I find if you use too much heavy cream, it just makes a soupy mess on the bottom, so. Once I have got all the heavy cream poured onto here, then I am going to let these sit for just a minute and let the cream absorb for a minute and soak in. And then after that, they are going to go into the oven for 17 to 19 minutes until they're nice and golden on top and they are cooked through. Okay, we are back. And the cinnamon rolls are done. They are absolutely delicious. And I am just going to spread some frosting over the top while they're nice and hot. I usually just put a little dollop on each one. And then I'll take a silicone brush and I will spread it out. But because these are nice and piping hot, it will melt super easy. All right. So now I'm just going to take this and spread it over the top. It's just that easy. And then as this melts, you can always do another layer if you want. And then Lexi will be ready to eat. All right. So I am going to attempt to get one of these smaller ones from the edge out of here for Lexi and get it on her plate so that she can eat. Look how delicious that looks. I may just have to have one for myself later. Lexi, it's time to eat. Do you want a cinnamon roll? Come on up here, kiddo. All right. Do you want me to peel it open for you? So that way it can cool a bit and you can.
Eat it.
There you go. You love cinnamon rolls, don't you? What do you think? What's the verdict?
I can talk with food in my mouth.
You can't talk with food in your mouth. Very good.
I like my parents.
She knows her manners. So what do you think now that you don't have food in your mouth? 2 thumbs up. Awesome. Well, we hope you all enjoyed our video of these yummy cinnamon rolls. And remember, the link will be down in the description below for the recipe. So what do we want to tell everybody, Lexi? You can't hear, but she said hit the like button if you like our videos, and you can hit the subscribe button if you want to be notified of our next video, and make sure and hit that bell so you can customize it to let you know as soon as we post a new video. Thanks, everybody.